this is Nick Black, and today I'm talking to actress extraordinaire Ms. Stella Stevens. How are you today, Stella?
I'm great. I love that introduction.
When did you first become interested in acting?
In acting at Memphis State University in Memphis, Tennessee. I started in the speech department learning public speaking, and someone approached me and asked if I would join the drama group only to make posters to entice other people to join, because I had always done artwork. So I did make the posters, but I did join, and I was warned that I would get hooked by it. And I said, well, I can't think of anything I'd like better than just to get hooked on something that had such great expansion. I can travel, I can meet people. If I'm successful at it, I would be able to have fun at a job, you know. So I didn't know all the long periods without work you have to go through and all the struggle that there would be, but I knew that it was for me. It was what I should try to do.
What did your family think?
They were horrified. I was the black sheep of the family. No one had ever done that. And I was like just the black sheep runaway whom they couldn't control or talk any sense into, actually.
I've looked this up. You were born in Hot Coffee? Is that correct?
I was born in Yazoo City, Mississippi.
Right, not Hot Coffee.
Well, that was a joke, but obviously you didn't think it was very funny.
Well, actually, I got that from Leonard Maltin's encyclopedia.
Oh, well, Leonard evidently can't take a joke either. First of all, I was born in Yazoo City, Mississippi, and I came to Hollywood and told my press agent I was born in Yazoo City, Mississippi. He said, what does that mean? I said, it means the city of death. He says, that's horrible. You can't tell people that. Give me some names of other cities in Mississippi. I said, well, there's Hushpuckany. He said, that's too silly. How about Greenwood? No, not good enough. Clarksdale? No, not good enough. I said, well, there is a place called Hot Coffee. He said, that's it. You're the cream of hot coffee. And we ran with it, and people loved it, and it was a joke for everybody except the people who lived in Yazoo City and thought I was ashamed of my birthplace and didn't feel good about it for a long time. So I do try to tell the story of how just kidding around sometime backfires.
Your first film, Say One For Me.
Yes.
Is that right? How did you get that break?
I went to 20th Century Fox and tested for a contract there and wrote my own screen test, and I was brought there as the girl who would play Jean Harlow. But I did not play Jean Harlow. But I did meet a director called Frank Tashlin who was doing the movie called Say One For Me with Bing Crosby, Bob Wagner, and Debbie Reynolds. So he put me in the picture. I had a running gag. It was a comedy role. I was a chorus girl because it was a musical, and introduced me later to Jerry Lewis, and then I ended up playing with Jerry in The Nutty Professor. Yes. So Frank Tashlin had directed Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis pictures, and he had known Jerry for quite a while. And by that time, I went over and was under contract to Paramount, where Jerry was. But he was my mentor early in the game, Frank Tashlin, who told me that I too could be a great director, and he would teach me all the comedy he knew, and boy, he did. And I think he was one of my early teachers that I'm very fond of.
I've read somewhere that Jerry Lewis also looked on him as a teacher. He learned a lot from Frank.
Yes, I'm sure he did. Yes, I'm sure he did. Frank was a brilliant man and a great comedy director and had a great sense of humor in real life, something that I didn't understand yet. Like he used to make funny remarks and giggle at me, and it would hurt my feelings. And then finally he looked at me and said, you don't joke with people you don't like. If you don't care about them, you don't do that.
Around this time, you did a Playboy spread, is that right?
I did the Playboy spread before I came out in Little Abner. Little Abner was my first starring role. It was over the Christmas holiday season between 59 and 60, so I was the January 1960 Playmate, and it coincided exactly with the time that the film came out. I had tried to get out of doing the Playboy spread, but Hugh Hefner would not let me out of the contract and forced me to do it.
What did the studio think?
Well, they pretended to not like it, but they loved it because it drew attention to the film, of course. So, you know, I learned a lot there, too. And throughout the years, probably the only enemy I think I have is Hugh Hefner and his organization, because they lied and lied and lied to me, didn't pay me what they said they were going to, used pictures that they were not supposed to have in their possession, to the point where I finally sued them. I have dreams of, like, dumping spaghetti on his head and, you know, some of those things you read that people do in restaurants. But those are just dreams. I don't like people to lie to me and tell me they're going to do one thing and then do something else. He had no respect for me, and therefore I have no respect for him at all.
Okay. Now, around that time, there was the Golden Globe Most Promising Newcomer.
Yes.
And they gave that to Angie Dickinson, Tuesday World, Janet Munro, and yourself.
I didn't realize who the other girls were.
Yeah.
It was a really exciting event, and I remember it clearly, and said that in my little speech that it was a strange thing to get an award for something one had not yet done, that I hoped I would live up to their expectations. So I hope I have, and maybe one day I'll get a Golden Globe for actually doing something. That would be nice. They don't have that category anymore.
Yeah.
Well, actually, with the advent of television, it's not such a small arena, you see, and so I think they may have discontinued that years ago because it would be hard to pick out of all the thousands and thousands. I mean, at that time, movies were the thing. Television was looked upon as a strange new thing of the future, kind of. And people doing movies didn't want to do television. It's not like that anymore.
I want to get on next to the Elvis Presley movie, Girls.
Oh. Mention another horror.
Oh.
I have never seen it, so you can't talk much about it.
What was Elvis like?
He was okay, showing me books of pills. And yeah.
Even then?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Seemed more interested in that than most anything, except singing, and he did that better than anybody. He was okay, but the producer and director were very cruel to me, and I swore I'd never see the film, and I never have.
Good on you, Stella.
Doesn't mean anything to anybody but one's own self to have convictions like that, but I did vow I'd never see it, and I haven't yet, and don't want to.
Well, you should stand by your convictions.
Thank you. I had other people in Australia who were fans saying, "Oh, you're good in it. You should see it. Go on,
Well, here's personally my all-time favourite film, Nutty Professor. I saw that when I was 11. I just completely loved it. I had such a huge crush on Stella Purdy. She was...
Thank you.
Gorgeous.
Yes, I think of all the characters I've played, I do love Stella Purdy a lot. She was so naive at the time, and I know I was so scared when I was doing that film. But with Jerry directing and Wally Kelly doing the photography of me, I look so beautiful in it. I know. I see this silverized blue eyeshadow now, and I think, oh, God. But I got a chance to see it at the L.A. County Museum last year because they had a screening, and Kathleen Freeman and I were there to speak about it with the audience because Jerry is doing Damn Yankees, and he was in New York at the time. So it was wonderful to see the reaction, and the print that they showed was an almost perfect print, and the man who owned it said to me, "Guess where I got it?" And I said, "Where?" He said, "Out of a trash can." It had been thrown away, and I dug it out, and here it is. So it was in quality to show at the museum, it was just great. I think in one scene, Buddy Love had one scratch down his face, and other than that, it was a perfect print. And you just wonder about the waste that goes on. I would have loved to have that print myself if I knew where the trash can was, Why would they throw something valuable like that into a trash can? Just astonishing.
How was Jerry as a director?
He was great. He was so energetic and so brilliant, and I had been in awe of him as a comedian anyway. I had seen him with Dean Martin, and then to see him in person, he just exuded sparks. He was so dynamic, and he did everything. He let them play music on the set in between when everybody else usually yells, "Shut up! Quit talking! Be quiet!" It's this horrible atmosphere. He had the most fun atmosphere playing, and he loved big band music, and while the hammers were hammering and people were chatting and everything was going on, they were working their butts off, but they were having fun with music. Well, nobody ever did that before. And then he was the first man to use a video assist while he worked, because Jerry, being in the picture, wanted to look at himself afterwards, so he used a video camera. And everybody poo-pooed it and said he was stupid to do it, and then now everyone in the world uses it. So he was not so stupid. He was a very brilliant man. Yeah. I learned a lot from him, too, about directing. He taught me everything he could while we were doing that film, took me into every daily that we had, took me to every rough cut, asked my opinion, and as I say, I was very naive and very innocent, but all I knew was what I could feel from it, and that's what I do as an artist anyway. So I saw it just change into a wonderful film before my eyes, not because of me, but with my encouragement and love and help, and so I'm very proud of it, too, because I was very close to the making of it.
It's a great film. Now, Dean Martin, you worked with Dean.
Yeah, after I worked with Jerry, and then I started working with Dean, I didn't see Jerry for 25 or 30 years. God knows how long it was. It seemed like a lifetime. And then I went backstage and saw him at Damn Yankees after all that time and had some pictures taken with him and met his wife and saw pictures of his child. But while I was working with Dean and Jerry were still not speaking, and so Jerry and I didn't speak for years and years and years and years. So we just drifted way apart and then still remain friendly people to each other, just don't see each other very much. I was very happy to see him at the backstage of Damn Yankees and to watch him in the play. He was fabulous in it. But back to the old days when I did work with Dean Martin, the 2 films I did with him I enjoyed very much. One was How to Save a Marriage and Ruin Your Life, which was a Stanley Shapiro written piece. He wrote Pillow Talk and a bunch of those kind of things, so it was like a Doris Day character for me, very much so. It was lovely. Jack Albertson and Betty Field were in the film, and it was fun to play that kind of light comedy. It was quite popular back in those days, but the really fun film was The Silencers, which was the first Matt Helm film. I played this red-headed Gail Hendricks, yes, who was a klutz, who wasn't dumb and stupid, but she was accident-prone, and that was a lot of fun, and I loved the director of that, Phil Carlson, who is now dead, but he was a magnificent comedy director who also taught me a lot about directing. So I've got to work with such wonderful people in my career. I still do, but they're not the legends that I had when I first came here. I work with people mostly much younger than myself who are just starting out now, instead of the reverse when I was first starting out. Yeah.
Around that time, in the 60s, you visited Australia.
Yes, I did. Actually, I went there for the opening of a film, and I believe it was How to Save a Marriage and Ruin Your Life. And I went to Sydney, and I believe I went to Melbourne at that time. I've been to Australia twice. I just really loved it. I still have great pictures of the Sydney Opera House from the water, which is just exquisite. And I had a polarizer filter on my camera, and the sky is so deep blue, it's incredible. So it's a very beautiful, wonderful city. Well, the first time I went was in the 60s, you said, and Martin Luther King was killed while I was in Australia. And in Memphis, which had been my hometown after I moved from hot coffee and Yazoo, you know. So I felt really horrible about that. But the second time I went was a happier event. I brought kisses from all his leading ladies to Rod Taylor, who was being honored by This Is Your Life Australia, Rod Taylor, okay? And met his mom and dad who lived there. And I went to Melbourne and Brisbane and Darwin and Alice Springs and got to see quite a bit of Australia and the outback. They were wonderful. All of them were wonderful. I enjoyed the country so much, and some people walked up to me. I remember I was taking photographs of some splendid area, and some guys walked up and said, "Here, try this," and handed me this new green and white film called Fuji. And it was just invented back then. About 75 that was, I think, or maybe earlier, 74. Anyway, and I did try it. So some of the first film I used of Fuji was done in Australia, because they were professional photographers who had tons of it to use to try out. And I was mostly doing a photographic safari of everywhere I went. I always take a camera with me.
What was it really like? The 60s in general, and for somebody who was a big Hollywood star.
It was a very volatile decade, yes. I do remember probably most about the decade, the coming of Elvis and his becoming the biggest star in the world, you know, that we've ever seen of a pop rock star, maybe until Michael Jackson or something, you know, as a singular human being. Of course, there's Mick Jagger and there's Steven Tyler. There were a whole lot of people, but still, Elvis started a whole new trend. And he came also from Memphis, and he went to a school close to where I went to school, but we never met until I met him at Paramount Studio. But I have written a novel, my first novel, and it actually deals with a rock star, and his life parallels Elvis's, because I was fascinated with the story, and still am, and think it's a good idea to tell a story like that, that is a parallel, but not about Elvis, because I don't know enough about Elvis, and I can invent anything about a character that I want to, you know, but I did use him sort of in his rise to glory and fame as a model for the character in my novel. And the novel is called Gilding the Lilies. And,
Gilding the Lilies. When did you write that?
Over the past 4 years.
Right. Getting back to great directors, you worked with one of the great, Sam Peckinpah.
Yes.
On a great movie.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites too, The Ballad of Cable Hogue. People who love westerns do love that western movie because it is quite different in that it's a love story, and
you get to sing too.
Yes, with Butterfly Mornings. Yes, I liked all the music in that very much. A very talented writer did that music. I don't think he's ever done another film. Wait for Me Sunrise was also a beautiful song. And yes, I loved that. I love working with Jason and David Warner, and Sam was hard but great because you knew that the work he was doing had a great deal of integrity and poetry about it, and you felt like it was worthwhile no matter how hard it was. And maybe if it was really, really hard, it will be better than you've ever done, you know? So we actors always think that. You know, I don't know if it's just innate masochism or what. Yeah, it could be. But we think if it's really, really hard to do, it might be really, really great. So that's always a possibility, I guess.
Well, we hear a lot about him hell-raising and stuff like that. Was he like that?
He was like that. The bar bill for our film was over over $40,000 for him that he ran up. So, yeah, that was the bar bill. And, not only that, 32 people quit and were put on the bus and sent home or fired. They quit or were fired.
Was he that tougher taskmaster?
Oh, God, yes. Yeah. And then a lot of them became pawns in a game between him and the production people, and so they would just get sent home for no reason because he wanted to get rid of them. And just to make it harder on the production people, I'm sure, because there was all that kind of stuff going on. Plus, somebody stole $25,000 in cash off the top and they never found it, but they fired the guy, but nothing ever happened. He was never prosecuted. No one said anything, So no business like this show business, especially movie making, where someone can come in and just be a thief and take off with the skim off the top, thousands of dollars, and then just get fired and walk away. Well, okay, I guess I'll leave.
Only in Hollywood,
I know. So I learned a lot on that picture. I'm still learning a lot.
There's a great scene. I mean, I haven't seen any nude scenes that are lyrical and then turn comic.
Oh, that's my trade. My stock in trade is being a comic person, a comic actress. I'm not a comedian or a stand-up comic, but I've always done comedy. That has been my specialty. I actually think I'm kind of boring if things are too serious. I know I've done melodrama, I've done soaps, I've done everything. Even when I did Santa Barbara, the soap, we did comedy in the afternoon. I was such a ditzy-dingy character, Phyllis Blake, that we actually brought a lot of comedy to the afternoon. We were supposed to steal these very valuable paintings, and we stole the duplicates instead of the real thing. We were so stupid. My daughter and I. Some people wrote and said, you remind us of Lucy and Ethel. You two girls are so great in the afternoon. Yeah. So that was worthwhile. That was fun. But God, it's hellish work to try to do soap. So much work in one day. I like a little rehearsal. A lot of it if I can get.
Live shoot.
Yes, it's a live shoot. Boy, you get a script a day and you have 4 to 5 scenes a day, which you must memorize, learn, do, and perform by afternoon. You learn them by lunchtime, eat, and then get dressed and do them. Harrowing. The next day you got to start all over again. I really admire those people who can do that.
Actually, speaking of Santa Barbara, I heard an interview with you and fans wrote to you and said, please show more skin, Stella.
They still keep saying that,
really?
Yes. So I'm going to do them the favor having my cookbook. It's actually a cook and lookbook, and a cookbook called the Fountain of Youth Cookbook, and it's actually about getting better with age, and the fact that now I'm trying to look better than I did when I was 20, and a lot of people say that I do, and I've recently been named in the top 20 favorite pinups of the world. For my fans have always provided and sold pinups. So the cookbook, part of it are my recipes from Old South to New West, and the look part is how I looked when I was 20 and how I look now in my 50s. And some of these are better. And pinups with food. So
tell us, what's a pinup with food?
Yeah, you'll have to buy the book.
We'll have to buy the book.
I will put it in a plain brown wrapper for you.
Wow. We'll look forward for that one.
Well, I could say something about, even a woman nude has food, doesn't she? Because her breasts feed babies, don't they? So it represents food anyway, in a way.
When's it coming out?
Well, I'm talking to a producer who's coming out in about a week and a half. I have a producer, publisher. Yes, I'm speaking to both kinds of people nowadays, producers and publishers. Yes, because I've been involved in putting together projects to direct and things that I'm writing.
It's not the same publisher as your novel?
Well, I don't know. It could be. We're starting with the cookbook. He does nonfiction.
Right, okay.
But he said he was interested in looking at it.
It's a great idea.
What it was about, so.
Where did you get the idea?
It just came to me naturally because I do cook so well. Bob wanted me to write the cookbook, and I have over 400 recipes, which I think are far too many. But some of them have kind of sexy titles. The original working title was Sexpot in the Kitchen, Spilling the Beans. But I don't think people really took to that as well. And then they said, no, tell us why you wrote this and everything. And I said, because all these years people keep asking me how I look so good and how I stay so young and fit. And I said, of course I exercise and everything, but I think it's what I eat. I think diet is really very important. And there are a lot of no-nos, things I don't eat that people won't want to listen to and won't care about.
Such as?
Chocolate. I don't eat chocolate. I don't drink cola of any kind. And I don't eat butter. So those are 3 things that if you cut out, you're going to lose some weight. See, a lot of this had to do at first with me trying to keep my weight down. I actually weigh the same as I did always. I have stayed the same over the years. I haven't gained and gained and gained, even though I've gotten older. They say your metabolism will cause you to gain weight if you eat the same amount of food. And it encourages eating raw foods and salads and things that have vital life energy in them that are raw and not overcooking things. And that's why I had to get out of the Old South because, they cook everything in bacon grease. I don't eat meats, red meats. either, so they are not
at
in
all.
the cookbook.
No red meats at all.
No, and sometimes maybe a little chicken or fish or shellfish, but very, very little. Mostly fruits, vegetables, and pastas and whole grains and things like that. It's just what everybody's been saying for all these years. All I'm saying is, look at me, I do this, and this is how I prepare it. And
the proof is in the pudding.
And I actually know that people tell me I look better now than I did then. I have some old pinups over there from a few years ago, and then I have these three which were just done last year.
Which look great.
This is the man I'm using for the cookbook, Steve Paulty. He photographed me for Femme Fatales magazine, so he's the one who's going to do my cookbook. I want them to be comic and fun. I don't want to put women off, but I also like them to see themselves in me as I do in other women. And the things I admire in other women, I appreciate for them and with them. I don't envy them and hate them for it. I would rather have people enjoy it with me for the amusing part and the artistic part that it is. Hopefully the cookbook will be good and come to Australia too.
Yes, and promote your book.
Oh, I'd love to.
Yeah.
I'd love to. My publisher is talking about a U.S. tour, so I'll just have to tell him he has to include Australia, maybe a world tour.
Definitely. Definitely, Stella. We'd love to have you.
They actually could be printed in many languages as long as the pictures speak 1,000 words, you know.
Yeah.
So I guess they probably could go into other languages. I never thought of that.
Okay. Getting back to film, a particular favourite of ours is Cleopatra Jones.
Oh.
Where you play the dragon lady. Is it really better for actors to play the baddie?
In that instance, it was. If you ever in your life feel frustrated about doing something and you only have to dream of dumping spaghetti on someone's head and can't do it, you know, then get a role where you can just pull out all the stops and be as mean as you want and love it. Because then it gives you a whole other point of view and it kind of gets it out of your system, makes you feel good, and maybe you give a good performance, you know. So I think it was therapeutic. I think the more the bad people love and relish what they do, the worse they are. So I loved her character a lot. But I loved the dying in the end when I was run through by the sword in my bathtub with the dripping dragon dripping water down on me. It was very dramatic.
Tamara Dobson, who was Cleopatra, she also was in another film with you, a schlock classic, which we love, Chained Heat.
Oh,
remember that?
Yes. That's two with Tamara.
Yeah.
Now, I did three, but the third...
you did another one too?
Oh, yes. The third one was called Amazons, which was a TV movie.
That.
Yes, about Amazon women coming back and taking over the world. Well, Tamara and I had a good time in that. In Chained Heat, of course, I fought with Sybil Danning and with Linda Blair, and Tamara fought with other people. So, but I tell you, it was like trying to fight a young horse. She has such long legs when she would fight me as the Dragon Lady. And as the Dragon Lady, I had to wear 6-inch platform heels to be as tall as she was, because I didn't want to look like a little shrimp beside her. And she is 6'2" in her stocking feet. It was so funny walking in Kowloon and in Hong Kong. Well, we were stationed in Kowloon and we shot at the Run Run Shaw Studios in Hong Kong. And so there were two guys, Poppy and Kara Kenyatta, Albert Popwell and Kara Kenyatta, and we called him Poppy. They were 6'4" and 6'5". Kara was 6'5". And so... for blocks down the street, just filled with Chinese people, you would see these three black heads. When Tamara and Albert and Kara would walk together, they were head and shoulders above everybody else. You could see them for just miles, you know, no matter where they walked. There was no one in the whole island as nearly as tall as they were. It was fun. There were a lot of great big people. But then I was up on my high platforms. But the bad thing was that my stunt coordinator, who was a man named Yun, who did all the women in that, he had to wear high heels while he did me. He had to put on high heel boots to do all this Chinese kung fu, and he did it very well. It was very dangerous for him.
Sounded like a lot of fun.
It was, but we had to shoot at night. We had to shoot from 12 midnight to dawn at the studio because they never shoot sound. In the daytime, no one would be quiet. Everyone around us was speaking in Chinese and banging and clattering and eating and moving things and hammering, and no one would be quiet because they shoot all their films silent and then they put them into 27 dialects of Cantonese and whatever, you know. So they had never had to be quiet in their lives for anything. So we had to shoot from midnight to dawn.
Yeah.
Yes.
They do that in Italy too.
I guess so. I thought they counted to 1, 7, 4, 2, 3, 4, 7, 5, 9.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. I've never made a film like that. But I can do it.
Yeah.
Can you speak Italian? No, but I can do numbers. 9, 7, 4, 14, 25.
I heard a story once where John Wayne was doing an Italian film, and all he was doing through the movie was going rhubarb, 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 rhubarb.
That's all he did in all his movies anyway. No, I'm just kidding. Just a joke. I did know John Wayne. Loved him dearly. Sweet guy. And I love his movies. Yeah, he's a great American hero.
Now, you directed a film called The Ranch.
Yes, I did.
Right. Starred
Andrew Stevens.
who happens to be a relation. Now, how was directing?
After waiting 30 years, it was kind of, oh, well, finally. And so now I'm still developing things to direct. I have a new property, which I've developed over the past 6 months to do. But it seems to be my direction that I've been going in since I met Frank Tashlin. It's just that it's very difficult when someone is a sex pot to be taken seriously for doing anything other than looking like a sex pot, probably having no brain.
So how was directing Andrew?
Difficult because he wanted to direct everything, and he's a very good director himself. I got a bullwhip. I walked around. I said, there's only one director on this set, and it's the one carrying the bullwhip, so shut up and do what I say. You just have to get those boys in line. But he's okay. He's fun to work with as a director. He has directed me on several occasions.
Terror Within was one of them.
That was one. That was the first one. And then Illicit Dreams was another one. And then...
Did you return the favor by being...
terrible and telling him what to do? Yeah. No, I didn't bother. Actually, I'm a very good girl when I'm working as an actor. I like to be directed by someone. I enjoy that, and I enjoy the process of acting. I don't want to step out of that. If that's not my job, I don't want to bother. I always interject what I think might be good, even to other directors, but it's just a suggestion. The reason I wanted to direct was because I saw that the director had so much control. Even the writer didn't have the control the director did. But there's one thing about a film. Film is made 3 times. Once when you write it, once when you direct it, and once when you edit it. So one must learn to write and edit, and then direct. And so I've tried to learn to do all 3, so that I have a good sense of all of those things. Then you can actually keep control of it, because otherwise they get out of balance. Those 3 parts have to go together.
Was it a satisfying experience for you?
No, because I had a horrible producer who later went bankrupt, and I had practically no money, and that people lied to me, and I had a cinematographer that had to finally be fired off the set. We had to finish it on our own without one, and it was hell. However, I have a film with my name on it that I directed, even though they took it away from me before I could do the director's cut, and I could have put it together a lot funnier because I had audio cues and things that they missed that they never knew about, but they wouldn't allow me to do it. Anyway, someone said, well, what would you wish for if you were directing something? And in Honolulu recently on the air, I said, I wish that a team of people like who helped Jodie Foster get Little Man Tate together would ever be around me in my life, where I could rely on someone to do their jobs and let me direct something, and I could do something very, very nice. But I have had such a hard time, first of all, not even being thought of as a director, being laughed at in my face, and having to create my own work, and having to find people to work with, and things that I don't have the luxury of having the cream of the crop around me to help me. Any of that would be a good help. I had green crew that had never done a film before on the ranch, because the crew walked off because the production people didn't pay them properly, and I went and there were like 6 people who had quit. So a writer grabbed a 10K lamp and pushed it over, and we started shooting, whatever we could. We didn't even have electricians on the set, so it was not easy. None of it was easy. And it was not satisfying, and the people were stupid that I had to work for, and they messed it up at the end. I told them they were going to lose the deal, because we had almost a deal while they had shown part of it, and I was directing it to get a theatrical release in Canada, and they lost it when they threw me back to the States and said, no, we can't afford you anymore, goodbye. So I told them they were stupidly going to lose everything, which they did. And then, thank God, they're not making films anymore. But it was a horrible experience for me.
But it was a lesson for you?
Another lesson, yes. Yeah. Another lesson. Never work with amateurs. That's in acting 101, I think.
Yeah.
When you get to directing 101 and nobody asks you for 30 years to direct, and you finally get a call from someone, it's hard to turn them down.
Well, you've done it, and you can say you're a director now.
Well, I was even before, but I was an auteur director before then, because I wrote, produced, directed, starred in, and edited my film, which was The American Herald.
The documentary.
Yes, that's a feature-length documentary, so I had done all of that.
Another film that we like is The Last Call. Playboy playmate Shannon Tweed meets Playboy playmate Stella.
Well, Shannon is a good friend of mine, because my boyfriend Bob Kulick is kind of known as the 5th member of KISS, and she's with Gene Simmons of KISS, and Shannon also has done all this nude work with Andrew. It's like almost incestuous, do you remember?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Shannon and me. And Okay, so that's Gene Simmons' pool table that we do that famous scene on. Yeah. I like that character too. It was funny because I read it and I was horrified when I first read it. I said, this director was called Jagmundra. He's from India. And he said, read this and see what you think. I said, well, Jagmundra, I read it and I can't imagine a woman that would do this to her own daughter. It's horrible. And I see absolutely no motivation for it whatsoever. He said, oh, Stella, you are perfectly right. There is absolutely no motivation. Please, would you bring me some? And with that, I said, yes, I will. I will bring you any motivation you want. We'll do it. And so we got on the set. We made it up as we went along. And she loves pain, you know. She likes it rough. Here, she slaps her thing. All the little things that we did just made it funnier. And that speech that I give my daughter as I walk out with her, I thought was wonderful. We'd created that on the spot. But I knew that he would let me work like that. And I thought, okay, why not do it? It's fun. I couldn't make any sense of it in the first place, that it would be real. But I tried to make it real for the screen. And I also like my tragic death going through the windshield. I thought that was pretty good.
You've done a few great death scenes.
Oh, I die and die and die. Yes, I remember when I was in the Alice Springs, I went to see some little Aboriginal children, and they looked at me like I had risen from the dead. They had seen the Poseidon Adventure, and they did see me die in that. And I walked into the room, and I was not dead. I'll never forget that. They were so darling, but they thought I had risen from the dead, yes, and come back from the grave. But it was a very spiritual sort of thing. They gravitated toward me, but they did think I had come back from the dead. And I thought, well, that's great. I really love that. To be able to feel that and see it from the eyes of a child like that. Because I never knew that I would meet children who would think that I was dead. Strange thing. But I die and die and die now, you know, and every once in a while I live through something and friends call and say, well, thank God you didn't die in that one. But the granny was the most fun to die in because I got to rise from the dead, super empowered, and then kill my entire family. So that was one of those really therapeutic roles, you know. It was a lot of fun. 2 hours of makeup every day to get that face on, and about an hour to an hour and a half to get it off. Getting it off was just as bad or worse than getting it on. But I did love the picture for its bawdy humor and for its ridiculous amount of blood and gore, because it was just so overdone. It was comedic, I think. I thought it turned out to be a very classy little tasty piece of film in its genre. Actually, Entertainment Weekly, that hates everything, said that it was the best piece of trash in its genre to come along in a long time. They also said the makeup artists had it in for them to try to make Stella Stevens and Shannon Worry look ugly. So I thought that was nice, too. Somehow they managed. Yeah. Even Shannon at the end, you know, her face crumbles at the end as well, yeah.
Now, I have another little quote from our friend Leonard Moulton. I don't know if you've read his encyclopedia, but he says, someday they'll erect a statue of Stella Stevens and its base will read, beautiful women can also be funny.
Thank you, Leonard. Yes. Yes, I think that's so sweet. And I had heard it once before because a fan of mine sent it to me saying that quote. He wrote me a letter and told me that Leonard had said that. I didn't know it was in his book. But it's wonderful because the difficulty I've had in continuing in my comic acting career is that I have been thought of as a sex pot instead of a comic actress, you see. So it's still difficult in a way because they think you have to be ugly or funny looking to be funny. And here is something I'll share. They always say, well, you've done this, you've done this, you've done this. What haven't you done? I'll tell you something I wish I had done, being pretty, hurting the comedy in a way. So I had tried out and gone for 2 auditions for this wonderful movie, Get Shorty, I wanted to be in. Well, I didn't get it. And I didn't know who got it. And I look, and there I am in the theater seeing it, and who walks in the door but Bette Midler. Well, she's so much funnier looking than I would have been no matter what I did. And it was great, and she took no billing, and I had to love her for it, but I hate her for taking the film away. I read really well. I looked really good, but I really wouldn't have been as funny. I could see it when I saw it on the screen. So there's an instance, you see. But I do comedy, but it's pretty comedy. I'm sorry, it's just pretty comedy.
Here in Hollywood, for some reason, actresses get less respect and comic actors. When you see the Oscar-nominated films, they're never comedies or rarely comedies. Yeah.
I need comedy in my life. The reason I needed it from Frank Tashlin and to understand it was that I was totally alone as a human being, except I had a child to support, I had no one to help me, and life was very, very serious. And the only way I could get through it without getting suicidal would be to learn the light side, the brighter side, the funny side. Look for it, search for it, because it nurtures your heart. It actually makes life worth living. And so it was the essence of my living is comedy. Otherwise, I can't stand it, you know? You can understand that. Yeah, life is very serious, and we have to look at the funny side of things in order to get through it and to make it easier on ourselves. So I've always appreciated comedy.
Yeah. Okay, last thing we want to ask you is what's next for Stella? The cookbook and...
The cookbook, hopefully the novel. Here in the States is a Renegade show that I'm doing, which is the Lorenzo Lamas and Branscombe Richmond show, and I play Branscombe's stepmother. He is a huge Hawaiian man, you know, and so he plays an Indian, Bobby Sixkiller, and I play Amanda, his stepmother. So he's saying, Mom, you know. It's pretty cute. We're cute together, I think. And maybe I'll recur because they have introduced me as his mom. I'm supposed to live in Flagstaff, though, and come to Bay City to see him, and I leave at the end of the episode, but I could return. Yes,
Yeah.
well, they've brought many people back for a little recurring role, including Sam J. Jones, our friend. Branscombe and Sam and I were on Waikiki Beach when I first learned to surf, so I had known Branscombe from before. He's darling, and I know his family. He has wonderful children, a beautiful wife. So it's really fun to be able to work with friends like that. It's possible. And also, I still audition for other things, and as I said, I've developed a thing that I would like to direct as a picture, and I hope it would go to TV series even. So I've developed it for that, so we're hoping.
Well, good luck with that, Stella.
Thank you very much.
And thanks very much for your time and trouble.
It was my pleasure, Nick.
And thanks for talking to all your fans back in Australia.
Oh,
'cause
well,
they
I hope
love
I can
you.
come to see you again
Yeah,
soon. I hope I have a good
certainly.
reason, yes. Bring my cook and lookbook over
Yes,
for you.
definitely.